In the last episode we took a look at product placement in video games in general. Now we are going to explore how exactly the process of getting a particular product to appear in a video game works. If you simply ask Google, how does product placement in video games work, you quickly stumble upon rapidfire.com. On their website they claim to be the largest dynamic in-game advertising network in the world, specializing in the delivery of advertisements inside of blockbuster video games for console, Steam, PC and mobile platforms. Alongside a lot of self-advertisement, you can also find a list of campaigns they have done so far, from advertising Finding Dory in Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Phantoms to Star Wars Episode 7 in Rocket League. They seem to have done everything. But how does it work? Generally, there are three different possibilities. There can be a prior agreement between advertiser and developer, the advertiser can be the developer, or the developer might want to pad out their game with real products to suggest realism. In a prior agreement between game developers and advertisers, gamers can interact with the product within the game context. The game plot itself is relevant to the product. For instance, Nissin Cup Noodles in Final Fantasy. Nissin Foods, the Japanese brand, has partnered with Square Enix, the Japanese video game company, in the 15th game edition of Final Fantasy, to feature a themed trailer and a mission inside the game called The Perfect Cup. This side quest challenged players to track down ingredients to add to a cup noodle, where the ramen is the favorite food of Gladius and Misita, the companion of Prince Noctis. In Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, gamers were required to text a photo of their purchase receipt of cup noodles in order to unlock a special Royal Raiment outfit for Prince Noctis, as limited edition packages of cup noodles that featured characters from the game were being sold in a special campaign. The reason for this partnership was simply put by Jaclyn Park, Director of Marketing for Cup Noodles. There's a strong synergy between Nissin and Final Fantasy in terms of who our fans are, our brand personalities and our authentic Japanese roots. A second example of a partnership between a developer and a product is the partnership between Death Stranding and Monster Energy. Branded products in Death Stranding are almost non-existent, except for Monster Energy. Tins of neon green Monster Energy are always available at the center of protagonist Sam's restroom, where he spends time recovering from missions. In turn, Monster Energy hosted a large booth at the Tokyo Game Show where Death Stranding was showcased. Co-branded t-shirts were given away as contest prizes. There are also cases when the developer of the game is the advertiser itself. Therefore, the product placement is not an agreement or a partnership between two different entities, but the game is more of a tool to market the product, both launched by the same entity. This is not limited to advert games by Disney or Sneak King by Burger King, but also include a more advanced example from a large corporation. Quantum Break, a game by Microsoft, featured numerous product placements, ranging from the company's software and services to its own hardware. Each member of the game's notorious corporation, Monarch Solutions, has a Windows Phone and a Windows 10 PC, and 5 Surface Pro 3 tablets are used to display security footage. Employees such as Martin Hatch and Liam Burke both use Lumina 830s running Windows Phone 8.1. Another way that product placement finds its way to video games could result from the desire of developers to reflect world culture and promote games in the real world. That is, product placement in that sense is a strategy chosen by developers to make their games more immersive, more similar to the real world, and a marketing tool to get a game name out. Sometimes, as in the famous instance of Hideo Kojima, this could be the very own signature of the developer, that is, stuffing his games with artifacts that obsess him. The most clear example of Kojima's work is the Metal Gear series, where respected products were featured in most versions. The Metal Gear Solid series employed real-world products like Apple's iPod, Sony's Walkman and Triumph motorcycles. Junk foods include Calorie Made, Mountain Dew and Doritos. In Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, end credits listed promoted products. In Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, Geico alarm clock was featured, and game characters were seen holding their Sony Ericsson mobile phones. Snake carries around an iPod with him, and he can play tracks too. More famously is the Japanese version, and to a lesser extent English version, of Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, which featured Doritos, Mountain Dew, Pepsi, Nax, Uniqlo t-shirts, Axe body spray and the Sony Walkman. In turn, Sony released a promotional Walkman that had green camouflage colors, including pre-recorded music, as well as a passcode that allows a Walkman t-shirt to be released in-game. Uniqlo sold Peace Walker shirts and placed demo kiosks in its shops. Mountain Dew sold Peace Walker themed cans. A great example of product placement in video games that adds a value to the game context and could emerge into a more interactive form in the real world comes from EA Sports. FIFA 18, in its story-based journey mode, showed how a narrative could fit into the game plot. Gamers play the character of Alex Hunter, a football player wannabe leading his way from a modest club to an elite team. As he attracts sponsorship deals from FIFA partners such as Adidas and Coca-Cola, and won a Coca-Cola sponsorship and starred in an ad called Uplifted Alex. In the real world, Coca-Cola launched what was claimed to be the first ad within a video game to be launched on real-world platforms. In one of its World Cup 2018 spots, Coca-Cola ran the ad using the story of Alex Hunter as a digital influencer. According to Diego Tuya, executive director at Mercado McCann company that teamed with Coke Esports and working on natural real experiences, it was a genuine moment. You always aim for organic ideas rather than ones where you can see the strings. Alex is great and is now part of Coke's history as the brand's first ever virtual ambassador. There are multiple ways in which advertisers can pay for in-game advertising. Depending on for which part of the equation the advertisers take money for, prices are calculated in a different way. For dynamic in-game advertising, a CPM, cost per thousand impressions, pricing model is followed. The CPM rate typically ranges between $4 and $12. CPM rate is influenced by the overall budget, campaign size, and inventory availability. Sometimes there are discounts for advertising agencies and media buying. For static in-game advertising, a flat fee basis pricing model is followed. The rate ranges from $50,000 to $500,000 for large-scale console games. This is influenced by integration level, expected audience size, and video game success. For advert games, such as Flash and mobile games, prices are typically quite lower than console games, as it ranges between $15,000 and $100,000. It is also important to mention the rates of console integration, which are square tiles situated throughout the Xbox Live dashboard. Although it is not a form of in-game advertising or product placement, because the ads are existence outside the game itself. The pricing model for console integration is CPM, within the range of $25 to $35. Audience size is determined in the light of two relevant terms, reach and frequency. On one hand, reach measures how many people are exposed at least once to the advertisement. That is, the total size of the audience, theoretically. Frequency, on the other hand, measures the number of times an average viewer is exposed to the same advertisement over the campaign period. Brand awareness measures how many people in a given population know about a specific brand. Recall is a measure of how memorable given advertisements may be among the audience who've been exposed to it. According to a 2009 study, product placement in video games is effective in fostering high spontaneous brand recall and influencing positive attitude dispositions among players who are less positively predisposed towards the brand. Two studies in 2016 found that the game genre could mitigate brand recall of product placement. That is, those who played the games violently recalled and recognized fewer brands than gamers who played non-violently, which means that advertisers are not getting the same return on investments in violent video games. Does the familiarity of the placed product matter? A research in 2017 suggested that familiar brands in video games perform better in brand recognition and brand recall among consumers, as compared to unfamiliar ones. However, both familiar and unfamiliar brands could benefit equally from repetition effects. As we have already discussed in the last episode, product placement can be changed and tailored to certain demographics and individual users. This of course raises questions of issues related to privacy. Generally, the placement of advertisements can be based on time and geography. Advertisers can also capture viewing data such as screen time, type of advertisement, and viewing angle. This information can be used to improve future advertisement campaigns and to correct copy problems or make a current advertisement more appealing to players. Of course, this is nothing new. No matter if you're streaming movies on Netflix, listening to music on Spotify, watching videos on YouTube, or simply surfing the internet using Google, your data and consumer habits are always tracked. While video game advertising does not create a new problem, it is a big part of an already existing one. Another question is how consumers, or in other words the gamers, are reacting to the practice of product placement. The study found that while players are not necessarily fond of dynamic in-game advertising, they do certainly tolerate it, and its presence does seem to have no real negative impact of players' attitude toward the game. On the impact of dynamic ads, they found that it can be important that in-game ads are changeable, and that if done with care, dynamic advertising can be used without risking much in the way of consumer backlash. This shows why product placement is so widely used, especially in video games. It is a low-risk and high-reward gamble. Advertisers can expect a huge audience for their ads, and developers don't have to fear alienating their customers. With such a big market for advertising with millions of gamers, RapidFire.com ambitiously talks about 1,200,000,000, of course you have to think about regulating it. An interesting example for a discussion concerning video game advertising is children's health. In the United States, it has been contended that video games are highly protected speech in the light of the First Amendment, akin to books and movies, as ruled by federal court cases. According to a study, most exciting advert games, like those that promote unhealthy food for children, would not receive such protection, as they do not possess complex narratives, themes and characters, or the highly sophisticated visual or auditory elements that US courts have indicated must be present for a video game to qualify for full First Amendment protection. Therefore, the First Amendment imposes no barrier to their regulation. Along these lines, researchers called for legislation to restrict product placements in media watched by substantial numbers of children, including video games, and described this legislation as workable and would likely be found constitutional by the Supreme Court. We think that this discussion about public health in video games is highly important but often overlooked. In the next episode we will take a look at the representation of tobacco in video games and how it affects consumers.